Welcome to Fifth and State, your inside look at everything Garland, unscripted. Join Mayor Dylan Hedrick and City Manager Judson Rex as they dive into the topics shaping our city. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mayor Dylan Hedrick.
And I'm City Manager Judd Rex.
And thanks for tuning in to our third episode of the Fifth and State podcast, where we break down the issues shaping Garland in a way that's just clear and easy to understand and trying to reach out to our citizens in a new manner.
That's the goal. That's what we're shooting for here. Yeah.
Last time we dove deeply into the city budget, and we're currently in budget season with our budget scheduled to be approved at our next council meeting. But today we're talking about another important issue that affects everyone in Garland, and that's housing.
Housing. That's a big one. Everybody is going to be interested in this one because housing kind of touches everything. It's neighborhoods, it's our community, and very excited about this one, Mayor.
Yes, indeed.
So last podcast, I was very rude. You asked me a very good leading question, and I didn't return the question. And so this time it's coming back. I hope you're ready.
You weren't rude. You just wanted to save it for this one. That's why, because you knew what the topic was coming.
That's true. Maybe we just planned this out perfectly. I think the question was, how did you get here? For you, maybe both. Like, how did you get to be mayor, and also, how did you land in Garland?
Well, I'll take that second one first. Landed in Garland is an interesting story. I met my wife in Houston, and she was doing her postdoc work. We moved up to Baltimore for 3 years. We lived in Maryland for 3 years, and being two native Texans and being too cold up there for us, we wanted to run back south as soon as we can. And she got a job at that time at SMU. I didn't know much about the area other than some brief times in college. I drove up to Dallas a few times, knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know much about the greater area. So we got with a real estate agent around SMU. So let's show you some homes around there. And we're like, we can't afford anything around here. Showed us the M streets, and yeah, you get a 1,500 square foot house for $500,000 at that time. This was a decade ago. So we kept moving north. The agent showed us this one house in Garland in the Oak Ridge neighborhood. We thought it was absolutely perfect, but there was one problem, that when we walked up to the door, it had a big sign that said no trespassing by order of U.S. Marshals.
Oh.
So
I feel a story coming on.
There was something going on with this house. So it turns out the U.S. government owned the house. It had been seized because the previous owner was in federal prison for one of the largest Medicare frauds in North Texas. He was running a pill mill in Dallas where he would pick up people and write them prescriptions for pain medication and then partner with a pharmacy to go fulfill those medications and bill Medicare and defrauded them out of millions of dollars. So the house was part of the seizure for him to pay back. So he spent about a decade or so in jail. And the house, it was owned by the government, so it was we were one of 10 bidders.
Yeah, so how do you did they auction it, I guess?
It was, apparently. We were one of 10 bidders, and we had the highest bid, thankfully. And even up to the day where we were moving in, we loaded all our stuff up on moving trucks. It was coming down here from Maryland, 1,700 miles, and a week before, we didn't even know if we would close yet because the former owner had to sign paperwork, but he's in prison. He didn't have power of attorney, so there was some kind of issue going on with getting the final paperwork.
Oh, wow.
But thankfully, our neighbor knew the marshal because, being a good neighbor, she knows everything that's going on in the street, that she came over and talked to us and talked to our agent, and we were able to get all the paperwork worked out at the last minute with the moving trucks en route to Texas.
Bought property from the U.S. government.
We did. If you look on DCAD, the previous owner of our house was U.S. government.
Oh, my gosh. That is a heck of a story.
And still in the neighborhood, our house is known as the FBI house because one night, in the middle of the night, about 40 black SUVs showed up and took everything apparently out of the house and seized everything. And I still haven't found where all the money is hidden in the walls yet. So I'm looking for that, but maybe someday.
I can see you knocking on all the walls in the house. No, this one sounds like there's something back there.
Dug up the backyard, haven't found anything yet. So, yeah.
That's incredible. Oh, my gosh. What a story.
Yeah.
The FBI house.
The FBI
the mayor
house.
lives in the FBI
Well,
house.
I do. Yes.
So is the neighbor, the lady neighbor, still live in the neighborhood?
She's my neighbor right across the street and still keeps an eye on it, So,
So that
thankfully
was,
to have good neighbors. That's all. I'm thankful for all my neighbors, especially great neighbors I met moving in, and it's just a fantastic place to live.
Yeah, Oak Ridge. It is a good neighborhood. We have a lot of neighborhoods in Garland. A lot of good neighborhoods.
There are a lot. They're all over the place. Home is really where the heart is. It's absolutely true. I was listening to another podcast the other day. Imagine that. Talking about the concept of home, and there's really no other feeling that home, brings out other than that word. There's no other feeling like it when you talk about home.
Yeah. Well, it's like, when our family goes on vacation, even if it's just like somewhere else in Texas or an hour away, it's like, it's always good to come home. It is. It's like a sense of ownership and feeling like this is my place. And that's interesting because Garland, there's a lot of owners, there's a lot of renters. We kind of have a mix, but it's all home, right?
It is home to them. Whether you're in an apartment, and I lived, when my wife and I first got married, we were in a little tiny apartment in Houston, and when we had our first daughter, she lived in an apartment the first year with us there. That was our home we were making together. So we were happy to buy a single-family home when we moved to Garland. That was our first home, and still is our first home, and we absolutely love it.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. Lots of different. I think that's something I notice about Garland is that we have a pretty broad variety of housing. My wife and I, our first house was a little townhouse, I think 1,300 square feet, something like that, in Ohio, and for us at the time, that was awesome. That was kind of what home ownership looked like, and where we lived, we'd rented all before that. Through college and even post college, that's just where we were at in life. But Garland has a lot of different housing options all throughout the city.
We do, and I was surprised as I was looking at some of the numbers about that. And from our economic development study back from 2023, they said there was about 62,000 homes in Garland, single-family homes. There was I asked to pull the data on this, and just since decade ago, really since the time I moved to Garland, about 2,300 single-family homes have been built in Garland, and during that same time, about 6,200 multifamily units or apartments have been built.
That's 8,700 over 10 years. Like, that's a lot. I mean, I think we're at about 86,000 total housing units now, so that was more than 10% added in a period of 10 years. And I realized, like, the last 10 years in Texas have been super high growth. I mean, every community, even for a built-out city, almost built-out city like Garland, we're still growing. And I guess the most shocking number there was the number of new single-family homes, which that's going to keep diminishing because I think we're almost out of land. There's not room for a lot more single-family homes now.
It's hard to build a big new housing development when you don't have that land, like those communities up North Salina or Melissa, or there they have large open tracts that we don't have.
Spread out everywhere. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The kind of the last big single family development, I guess, was the Wyrick Farm
Riverset development
in Riverset, and that was it's like 600 some homes, so that helped with that 2,000 number as far as new single family homes go. But yeah, there's just kind of little infill homes here and there. But probably not going to see a lot more single-family homes built in Garland, I guess.
I wouldn't think so unless you tear down something to build new. And it's interesting that Senate Bill 840 that passed recently, trying to address that a little bit, that those any property that's currently zoned commercial, you can put up a multifamily use there.
That was a big change.
And it goes into effect very soon. We're recording this on the 26th of August.
26th today.
And so September 1st that goes into. So we're kind of wondering how that will affect our city. So SB 840 by right allows a developer to build a multifamily development that was formerly zoned commercial. That could be an office building, a warehouse, or mixed use without requiring them to rezone or, as far as the city is concerned, special permits, a traffic study, a water study on whether or not there's capacity in the water or sewer system. So it takes a lot of the local control away for these type of developments. It also has minimum standards for density that the city can't restrict below a certain amount, and for height as well.
Yes, not just the fact that, okay, if it's commercial land, you can build multifamily there, but there's height that's restricted. Essentially, we can't regulate a lot.
Even the parking requirements, we can't demand more parking than one parking space per unit under SB 840.
Yeah, boy, that's pretty comprehensive. Basically, any piece of commercial land, anything that's not heavy industrial, that's non-residential, so commercial, office, if it's zoned for that, like it's automatically you can build multifamily there.
And by automatically mean by right, that it doesn't have to come in front of the council for a zoning change.
I mean, just go for it. Go get your permit and start building, multifamily apartments. Not just that, I guess it's any kind of residential, really. Any multifamily or mixed use is what it defines it as.
I think the intent with the legislature was that trying to address the housing shortage or perceived housing shortage of so much growth that's happening in Texas and North Texas specifically, they want to increase the housing stock of various types of housing, multifamily especially with that, to make housing more affordable in general.
Yeah, it makes sense. I know there is, and I forget what the statistic was, but a couple of years ago there was I think in DFW they needed to build 30,000 units a year in order to kind of meet supply and demand, and that's a lot of units. That can't all be single family homes out in the exurbs. Mm-hmm. That's got to be some stuff here in Garland too. So. I guess out of those 8,700 units that have been built over the last 10 years, most of them are multifamily, and we're probably going to see that trend continue. We've had a lot of townhomes built, actually. I'm thinking like District 3, which has had, I don't know the number, but there's 3 or 4 townhome projects going on right now, too.
Mm-hmm.
A little different type of housing offered.
So District 3 is down South Garland, largely along I-30.
Yeah, I-30 in the lake. Covers all that area.
I think it's great that you offer, at least the developers come and offer a variety of housing options for people, marketing at people they might not want the yard to take care of and the maintenance that goes along with that.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. There's nothing better than the smell of fresh cut grass, though. I love doing my own yard, but if maybe you're a little bit older and you don't want that maintenance headache.
Yeah, yep. What do they call it? Lock and leave type of concept where no maintenance required. Yeah, I like the smell of the burnt gasoline coming out of the lawnmower too, mixed with the green grass. Like, that's just
you got to go electric if you're dealing with that. Electric, you never have the problem of stale gas. For the wintertime, it starts up in the spring, no problem.
And
you're ready to go.
I am 100% guilty of not taking care of my mower in the wintertime, and it always ends up at some small engine repair place.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like, I forgot.
I was interested to see, too, part of our economic development study that they rated 62% of the houses in Garland at good or better in desirability. So we have a pretty decent housing stock here, but we're always pushing to get better.
Yeah. Quality is important. We have a lot of housing stock. It's generally older, but I think what that study showed is that generally things are in pretty good shape. Even though it's older housing stock, I think our average age was 1972 or 3. I think was the average year built for our single family homes. So if you think about it, that's a long time ago. That means that's 50 years ago.
50 years ago, and they're still desirable, at least according to the study.
Yep.
And we have a few programs in place to help people make those houses even more desirable, especially through our Neighborhood Vitality program. We're trying to assist people in renovating their exterior. Or I know one thing I've looked at on City Council is a possible program through 380 agreements to help people renovate their homes and eventually raise their values of their homes. And in the end, what that means for the city is higher property values is more revenue and property tax.
Yeah, that's getting to kind of one of our core challenges, which is Garland is pretty affordable, and so the housing prices, housing values, when you look at the taxable value, is lower than other communities. But we've got good quality housing stock. But how do we help to push those prices higher so that the value's there from a tax standpoint. Of course, that's the city manager trying to generate revenue, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, and talk about that revenue per acre per that economic development study. The single-family housing, it's about $6,400 per acre of revenue that we generate, and you compare that to something like multifamily housing, that's about $10,000 per acre that's generated. So you get a little better bang for the buck if the city allows multifamily versus single-family. And one of the questions that I got online is, why does the city allow so many multifamily units to be built?
Yeah.
I think we partially answered that earlier, is that there's just not much room left to build single-family homes. But I have my thoughts on why we're getting so many multifamily units. I want to hear from you. What do you think?
Yeah, I've said before that air is our new land. I mean, we've got about 3% land mass left. That's not much, and it's kind of tough sites to develop. And so I think the only way for us to continue to grow, which is how a healthy community survives long term, you got to go up. And that means multifamily in a lot of instances. But I know it also an important point, and I think council looks at this all the time when we get a multifamily zoning case come up before us, which will be different with SB 840 now, I guess. But
we won't get those coming up in front of us anymore.
So public hearings,
perhaps.
But it's also about placement. Like, where does it go? Not in my backyard. I don't want multifamily there. And so council's been careful about where to place these multifamily projects. And one that's under construction right now that if you're in District 8, you're aware of, is Beltline and Garland Avenue area. Babe's Chicken, right behind Babe's Chicken. Like, there's a super dense multifamily project there that I remember council approved a few years ago, and it was like 40 units per acre. I was like, holy cow, that's really dense for that area, but it's kind of appropriate. It's right in a commercial, huge main corridor on an arterial street, and we always kind of help them transition in multifamily. If you're next to a bunch of homes, maybe scale it back a little bit to help provide some buffer. So, I mean, I hate that SB 840's taken away some of those tools where we can kind of fiddle with things to make it fit in. But still, that was a very dense project, and it's neat to see it actually happening now.
And it's one of the few multifamily apartments in Garland that has actually structured parking garage next to it, which helps contribute to that density. They're able to pack more because they don't have to use as much land area for surface parking. So, not as much pavement taking up the space. And if you're wondering what an arterial street is, because I threw that word out there, so that's our major road. So if you think about Beltline, Garland Avenue, Shiloh, Avenue D and B, big roadways through Garland. Centerville, Broadway, all the big ones. Yes. And then you have the collector streets, which are more of your main roads in your neighborhoods, maybe Yale or Apollo or some of the smaller ones. And then eventually you get down to your residential streets. It's probably a street you live on, perhaps. Yeah, yep. It all feeds into an arterial, carries lots of cars. People are asking, why does Garland allow so many, or why do you build so many multifamily apartments? It's just, oftentimes that's what developers bring to us. The city has a limited role in bringing these to market. We do incentivize in certain ways through rebates or fee incentives or, that kind of thing to bring projects. But oftentimes the developer they see a project, a piece of property, either it's already zoned multifamily or it has to go through a zoning change to get multifamily, and that's what that'll make a return for them on that property. So it's just simple, the market working, and that's all the people coming to North Texas is the reason why we end up with more multifamily apartment buildings everywhere. Yeah. That kind of brings up a good point that we, the city, we can't control everything that happens on property. We if we own the land as a city, which we do in some instances, we have a lot of control over what happens on it, obviously, if we own it. But the other way is through zoning, and kind of our toolbox for that's even being narrowed down with things like SB 840. So you're right. We're kind of in a reactionary state to some extent that if there's a vacant piece of land or something that needs to be redeveloped, we're waiting on somebody in the private sector, a developer, to come and say, hey, we think we can make this work. Let's talk. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where things start. And that was the case years ago downtown with our transit-oriented development. We work with Trammell Crow companies to build that new facility right next to City Hall, it kind of took a risk for them because that time the rail was new in Garland. There wasn't much action happening downtown, but that was one of the first kind of steps in the redevelopment of downtown was that project.
Yeah, well, and that we need more rooftops, right? Mm-hmm. That was to support a vibrant downtown. We need more rooftops, and I think that those two projects, the multifamily projects downtown with parking garages, made a big difference for being able to help revitalize the square. And I think we need a lot more housing downtown to keep that vibrancy going.
You fast forward to today, you have projects like the Draper that's coming in. That's a little bit west of downtown, but still new housing in the area. It has a mix. There's going to be some townhome units associated with it as well. It's adding to that rooftop mix, getting the people in the area, to contribute to the revitality and new growth that we're experiencing in downtown.
Well, and so for people that say, or residents that say, well, I need, we need another grocery store, we need some more restaurants and retail, those types of things. I know that sometimes our response is we need more rooftops first. Like we got to be able to justify, or developers got to be able to justify, making the expense and the investment of bringing a commercial project. We got to have the rooftops. That conversation comes up a lot. Cart and the horse type of situation.
Right. Now I'll touch on one other area about we've had single family homes going in recently is Eastern Hills, where that project really took a long time to get off the ground, and through the different zoning process was a challenge for the developer to get to a point where they were actually under construction right now with 300 new single family units there.
Yeah, it might be one of our last single family.
And talk about rooftops needed. That'll add 300 rooftops to that area to hopefully spur some growth again in that area.
Yeah, well, they're talking, $500,000-$600,000 plus homes too. So, again, city manager looking at tax value and revenue and keeping our budget sustainable. That's a big deal. But it's going to be a nice development that will enhance that neighborhood.
And hopefully soon they'll see the benefits of new businesses moving to that area because of that. So I'm hopeful for that, and hopefully we'll be able to use some of our Proposition B bond dollars to draw some businesses down there for economic development incentives. So I was interested, another statistic I saw is that approximately 20% of the single-family homes in Garland are rental properties, compared to 15% in Richardson, 22% in Mesquite, and Dallas County as a whole has about 17%. So we're really right in line with other surrounding cities and the county as the number of rental properties.
Yeah, as far as that was single family rentals, right? Yeah,
yes.
That's actually pretty. It sounds like we're kind of on par for the area as far as that goes.
So I mentioned when I first got married, my wife and I, we lived in an apartment together and lived for a year with our daughter. And through all stages of life, the city's got to provide different types of housing for people, for the residents, or whether it's an apartment when you're just starting off, or maybe a retirement home that is another type of housing that you may not think about, or people single family home, they may want a duplex or even a townhome where more dense development, something like that. But just all types of developments for all types of people.
Yeah, and we have a pretty good mix in Garland. I feel like lots of different types of housing. And then, of course, they always come up with new types because I think people's lifestyle just demands a different, something different. I know we're probably thinking the same thing here, the build to lease or build to rent products where it's like a whole think of horizontal multifamily. So it's looks like a single family house, but it's like a whole development of it. It's gated. And they're all for rent. I know we've got one of those that opened up in Garland last year, and I think we have another one that's been approved too. So you can kind of pro and con each type of housing based on what your situation is right now. But the truth is, throughout somebody's lifetime, they're going to need every type of housing.
I was thinking too about auxiliary dwelling units. This is something that council's talked about within the past several years, of building a granny cottage on the back of your house where your relatives may come and live with you as they age in place. Yeah,
well, I think we have a guest house on our next council agenda as far as something like that goes. So if you got room for an extra unit in the backyard, that's an option. A lot of cities are doing those ADUs, as they call them now.
They're doing that, and also Austin is having some discussions and regulations around that exact topic where the cities aren't allowed to have as much control either, where those are now being allowed by right in some cases.
Yeah.
I know that was one issue everyone's worried about. Oh, if it's rentals, and you get that on as far as policy on council a lot is there's a lot of renters in the area. How does that affect property values? Is there's a perception that they may not care for the property as much as someone who has ownership in it, or you have an absentee owner who's in, say, another state somewhere.
Yeah. Well, believe me, I think I hope code enforcement's okay with me saying this. Owners and renters both sometimes don't mow their lawn, and we have to send them enforcement letters. That happens both ways, but you're right. Yeah. It's that sense of home comes in a lot of different packages, and whether it's owner or renter, that we've got a place for everyone, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And talking about a place for everyone, we've talked a little about renters, but I know Section 8 housing is another big topic that I hear from a lot. Do we allow Section 8 housing in Garland? How many units do we have? And certainly, please don't build them next to me, is what I hear a lot of people say. So.
And that's such a, Section 8 housing and I guess public housing or government housing's evolved over time. So you think about like a government project or a housing project and how that used to be.
You think of the projects.
You think of the projects,
yeah.
And those are fewer and fewer now. I think the America decided, back in the 60s and 70s, that projects were not the best way to provide affordable housing, and so Section 8 now is not a project. It's a voucher that somebody that qualifies can actually hold with them and take that wherever they need to go. If they want to go rent a single-family house because they've got a larger family, and their income still qualifies them for that voucher, housing choice voucher, they can go anywhere as long as the landlord accepts it. And so you might have somebody living next door to you that is a Section 8 housing voucher holder, and you never know because it's not a project, right?
As long as their landlord's willing to accept that form of payment and that assistance, then like you said, they could be right next to you. They're your neighbors as well. And
the city, has about 12 or 1,300 vouchers that we administer. We get through HUD about $20 million a year for that program. We've done it for many, many years, and one of the things that is unique about the program is that we inspect all of those units. In order for us to pay, for that voucher to kick in, the landlord has to, and the tenant has to agree to an inspection. And so, we actually get in and inspect these things and make sure that the housing is quality and that all of the codes are followed, and there's a lot of checks and balances in there so that residents don't have to worry, do I have a project next to my house? Is it, what's going on? And worry about the integrity of the neighborhood and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So, again, the government got away from housing projects a long time ago, replaced it with these vouchers that move with people. And then they also brought forward the low-income housing tax credit program, which I think was enacted in the 80s. And we've got, I think, 15 tax credit developments in Garland now. That's probably I know council's looked at this over the last few years. You would never tell driving by a low-income housing tax credit development that it is kind of low-income housing, because most of them are newer. They're kept up well. They pay taxes like every other development does. But in order to rent a certain number of those units, you have to your income qualified. So depending on your income, they do discount the rent through those tax credits. And so instead of government building projects, they give out tax credits to developers who can then lower rent. And some of those units, not all of the units, are income qualified. And so it's kind of a unique thing there.
So I know during my time on council, we've had several groundbreakings, well, really ribbon cuttings, I should say, grand openings for these new developments that we go take a tour of on council, and it looks like just any other apartment complex. It's got a pool, it's got a game room, it's got all the amenities that you would expect in a modern apartment, but they accept both people who are at market rate and people who are below market rate for their to be tenants there.
It's a mixed income development, and you'd never know driving by it how it's any different than any other multifamily project. So there's some of those scattered throughout Garland, and then there's just a lot of market rate stuff too. That's mostly what's been built. I think especially in the last 10 years is the market. Everybody knows housing costs have gone up. I know that's something we hear about frequently is, man, I can't even afford to rent here in Garland or in the Metroplex anymore. And that is, I think, again, going back to SB 840, that was part of, I think the legislator's intent was, hey, let's increase the amount of housing, and maybe that helps control the cost of housing. Mm-hmm. So affordability is a factor for sure.
Well, that brings to the next part. What can the city do to make housing more affordable? It's always the question. People, it's kind of funny. People always talk about, I don't want you to do anything to my house to lower my property value, because if I sell it, I want it to be as high as possible. But I also, at the same time, want to have a lower value as possible, so I don't have to pay as much in taxes. So
paradox going on.
It is, But what can the city do to make housing more affordable? And I think that a lot of it comes down to policy of the council, and that's one thing that I think Austin was trying to do through Senate Bill 840, and we'll see if that's successful or not. But one thing I know on council that I've done is help redo our zoning entitlement process, where we used to require a site plan, and now it's just a concept plan. So that's getting into the details a little bit, but really it means getting through the process faster for developers so they don't have to spend as much time, because time is money. And if they're able to get through our zoning entitlement process faster, get through to where they get a building permit, they can save some money in the whole development process.
Yeah, we play a role definitely in that development process, and making it easier lowers the risk for developers, and it just kind of puts the city in a position where we're developer friendly, business friendly, however you want to look at it there, and that definitely plays a role. And I think the legislature looks at that a lot as far as cities getting in the way and driving costs up. Not always our intention. I think it's always like, hey, we want to control the quality of housing, and that's one thing, but putting up too much red tape can almost have an opposite effect on things.
Oh, it certainly does. I know as my career as a civil engineer, the easier you can get through that development process, the more appealing you become to developers who want to do work in your city. So some cities are absolutely very difficult to get through their process. It may take up to 18 months to finally get a building permit, where there's no reason why in Garland we can't be the easiest city to work with in the Metroplex.
Yeah, no, having that reputation would be awesome. Mm-hmm. Definitely something we're working toward. Well, gosh, housing. We've talked a lot about different aspects of it. I'm trying to think what else. Well, I know one thing that's coming up, Mayor, that is worth mentioning. And if this podcast will go out in time for folks to know that we're going to come to the September 15th work session with a housing analysis. So council approved in our budget last year some funds to do essentially a housing study for the city. And so we hired a consultant, and man, I feel like we struck gold with the consultant we hired, because they not only sort of pull the data like we've talked about, how much owner occupied and renter occupied housing, the basics. They came out here and really intimately got to know our neighborhoods, because housing, homes are part of a neighborhood and part of a community, and so they came out. They really got to intimately know Garland, neighborhood by neighborhood. And so
I wish they would have come to me, because during the campaign I knocked on thousands of doors and I probably saw half the city just walking around the neighborhood. I was amazed. Just
probably have some insights there.
I could probably give some, tell them something in their report, but it's just people take pride in their houses. I know that's something that I hope this report will show as well.
Yeah, and it is all about taking pride in your neighborhood, and I'm really, really excited for the council and the community to see this presentation, and I'm probably playing it up too much, but it's so insightful. We talk about how we can improve our neighborhoods and our community, and this study and recommendations that come out of it are really going to help us kind of focus our economic development dollars. You mentioned earlier the Gateway and Corridor funding that's was in the bond package passed this year. This study is also going to help us figure out, okay, where do we get the most bang for our buck there, and how can we help the neighborhoods that need a boost? What are the different tools that we can use? You mentioned earlier our home improvement incentive program and 380 agreements. We have a lot of different levers and dials we can move to help move the community forward. This is going to give us a roadmap for exactly where do we do it, when do we do it, what areas are most ripe for investment. I'm excited about it. So work session September 15th, 6 p.m. You can tune in. You don't even have to come to the work session room. Just watch it from home, and I think it's going to be super insightful for council and the community to hear this study.
I'm curious to see how the spending we've done over the past several years matches up to what their proposals are and their recommendations, because we spent a lot of money already with neighborhood vitality. I know in my neighborhood right now, this past weekend, I was out clearing the median because they're putting in new landscaping and putting in that sweat equity that's part of that grant requirement. So hopefully their recommendations match up to what we're doing already.
Yeah, well, it is, they talking to the consultant a little bit, they talk about kind of smoothing the edges, and I think that's where council was going with the Gateway and Corridor funding, improving the look of our streets as you drive into the community, gives an overall impression that, hey, I'm in a place that takes a lot of pride in itself, and this is different. I feel different here. Maybe I want to buy a house here. That's really what we're shooting for there. So yeah, there's a lot of different tools and dials and levers to pull and to make not only our housing better, but also our neighborhoods better. It's kind of it's all part of the community aspect of the great work that we do.
And I think we'll continue that work, and that's part of my job as mayor and our role as council to keep the growth, keep going, make the community more desirable. Housing and jobs and shopping experiences, all that ties together.
Yeah, yep. Mm-hmm. Moving Garland forward.
Exactly. One of the questions that I received was, please discuss the taxable value, what the taxable value of a home needs to be to support the services that the city provides. And this goes a little bit, you mentioned a little bit about the Garland Challenge, and you had a great graphic at some of the town halls of here's the expected revenue we'll receive over a 20-year period from property taxes from a house. And here's the street in front of your house. Now, if we were to repair that street in front of your house, it costs $80,000. But over that same period, an average Garland home, we only receive about $50,000 or so in property taxes.
Yeah.
So that math doesn't work.
Yeah. As they say, the math doesn't math.
Right, yeah.
But that's the school district's doing a proposition in November for their tax rate, and Dr. Lopez kind of talks about Austin math. Maybe this is some Austin math there, but yeah. So average single family house generates $50,000 over 20 years in city tax revenue, but to just replace the street in front of your house, and just your side of the street too. That's how we factored this. Is about $80,000.
You let the neighbor take care of the other half, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's like we're upside down there, and so that's just streets. That's not police, fire, public safety.
Well, and that street,
everything else.
That street has a water line in it and has a sewer line in it as well. When you flush your toilet, it's got to go somewhere, and the city takes care of that. We don't necessarily use property taxes, and we talked about this a little bit last time in our budgeting discussion, that there's separate fees for wastewater and for water. So that all-in number is a little difficult to get at. Certainly we could find the calculation, and maybe we'd do that in a future episode of what does it take, an all-in number. But all these different fees that you pay for go into the maintenance and all the services the city provides.
Yeah, and that may be a good future episode right there.
Yeah.
Because the math doesn't math, and that's what Garland's challenge is. And we talk about if we were average across the Metroplex, we'd have another $90 million a year in resources to provide more services, lower the taxes, fill more potholes, all those things, and that's where that number comes from. And then the other piece is, I think on a you own a home in Garland, I own a home in Garland, a lot of people own property in Garland. When you sell that, you want to have equity and be able to make some money on that, on your investment. That's what it boils down to. And so, yes, if property values go up, you are going to be paying more taxes, but it also means that you're going to have more return on your investment over time. And I think that's what we're shooting for, is to let's see that average property value go up over time, because that means that whoever owns that property and has made investments in it is going to get some return on it. And so there's a lot of different ways we can do that. I know council's pursuing a lot of policies and programs that will help get us there. And over the long term, I believe we can overcome Garland's challenge and see that $90 million number shrink instead of grow.
Oh, and that's exactly what I'm working towards as mayor as well. I'm here because I want to improve all aspects of Garland, and overcoming that challenge is a big part of it. So
Awesome.
I'm glad to have this discussion. I know it's very important because housing it touches everyone in our community. And hopefully this episode gave everyone a better understanding of housing market in Garland, what we're doing about it, and the role city policy plays in that. So ask you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever platform you use. Look us up on YouTube and follow us on Instagram and Facebook as well, so you don't miss any of the episodes. So we'll see you next time on 5th and State. Good night, Garland.